I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, so I could sit out here and waste my life away. Drag back home and drown my troubles away. It's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me and people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is living in the new world with the old soul. They're living like kings east of Kingston, and they all want total control. Want to know what you think, want to know what you do, and I know they don't, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do, and the dollar ain't shit, 'cause it's taxed to no end, but they're living like kings east of Kingston.
Thanks very much, Ivan. Honestly, man, thanks so much for opening up the show that way.
Yeah.
That's great. Welcome to the construction life, man.
Thank you for having me, Manny.
No, this is going to be good. It's not too early in the morning, but you got your crew all started and everybody's getting ready.
Man, my day starts at 4 a.m. every day.
Does the gear shift when the colors change?
The gear, no, not so much. Not so much. Our day shifts a little bit. We run long days, so they shorten up a little bit. We start a little later and come in a little earlier. But
how long you been doing this now?
I started in 2006 or 2007, so 17, 18 years.
That's a good chunk of time.
Yeah. I was actually a motorcycle mechanic before I was an arborist.
Really?
Yeah.
What was your favorite bike to work on?
Well, Harley's because it was so easy, right? It's a sledgehammer.
I'm not
and duct
surprised
tape,
that you're saying it's. We've had some jokes, I guess, where you can get some parts at Home Depot to fix a Harley, right?
Yeah.
It just kind of fits, right?
Briggs and Stratton technology.
Well, welcome, Ivan. Let me share the deets. We're going to talk about. I guess we're going to talk about Mother Nature.
Yeah.
We're going to get out there and just talk some things. And then off mic, you were just sharing that you know quite a few people that have been on the show.
Yeah,
Great. But we met through Kim, and Kim's been, he's an active listener of the show, and he's always like, you got to get this guy. So we connected that way, and then we got talking, and here you are. So.
Yeah, no, Kim's awesome, and I'm sure the Best Damn Roofer is going to take that song and
he's going to do something with it. Yeah, Josh.
King's the east of Kingston. He'll run with that one for sure.
He should do something. He's been a busy guy, man, all over social, taking care of a bunch of stuff, which is all good. So I have a lot of respect for him.
I love what he's doing.
Ivan's here. Ivan Fredette.
Yep.
Yeah, Ivan Fredette from Safe Tree, www.safetree.ca. Number to reach them is at 289-650-1775, and his email is info@safetree.ca. On IG, it's Safe Tree Ltd, and then Facebook is Safe Tree Professional Tree Care. I'm wearing a Jason Guest t-shirt today, Guest Contracting up north there. Check out the TCL link tree for many great and exclusive offers from Black Ladder, Box Gobbler, Bunky Life, Zeps Gear, and Mud Mixer, and many more offers being added to the tree each week. And don't forget to check out our own TCL shop where you can get official TCL tees, hoodies, caps, espresso cups, and more. It's great being a TCL listener. Hey guys, the building show is coming up in Toronto, November 29th to December 1st. Do you want to go for free? Use the promo code TCL Expo and you'll get a free pass to go to the show. See you guys there. I'll be there. And we're going to talk about just taking care of things.
Yeah.
Outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the relationship between humans and trees and trees and construction, especially.
I know that we'll get started with, it's a constant battle, I guess, for most GCs when they get on job sites that they have to have this conversation. Why is it that?
Yeah, so the problem we have, so we see it the other side. We're dealing with it all the time. We're trying to protect the trees before the contractors go in, and we always got this battle back and forth, right? But the way I see it is, hey, if it wasn't a tree and it was a garage, then you wouldn't hit it, right?
Same thing.
So for us, it's hey man, they've been here a lot longer than us, and we need them more than they need us, and yeah, man, it's just for Safe Tree, it's finding the relationship between humans and trees, right, and that balance, right. There's obviously a safety issue sometimes, but man, we need them, and everybody feels better when they're around.
I wonder. That's the one thing about being a contractor. It doesn't matter which level of contracting that you're in, what trade person or what trade you're working, I think we all plant trees.
Yeah.
At some point in our early career, I mean, I've planted, I can't tell you, maybe a dozen or so trees.
Yeah.
And I've seen them and they grow, and I've actually lost a couple too. We'll get into that. But yeah, I mean, I've got a fondness for trees. And then whenever I'm doing a job, the hoarding and protection, but I'm also conscious of how close we can get there. The rules regarding the city and what they allow us to do are, I guess, they're good for, I guess you need that distance for the bad contractors.
Yeah.
If you have a contractor that cares about the trees and the environment that they're working on, they're all constantly thinking about it. They're wary about any kind of COs or any kind of machinery, anything that's happening around that tree. Because, like you said, a tree, it breathes it all in.
Yeah.
So we have to be conscious of that. Like, it's nothing worse than me seeing a hardscaper using a quick cut right next to a tree.
Yeah.
And seeing that plume going right into the trunk.
And, you know, if we do it right, we can go in before contractors and prune. We can root prune. We can excavate with what we call an air spade. So it's air excavation. And we can prune the canopy, too, in preparation before people come in, right? But nobody knows that we do that.
They don't want to do the research?
Like, well, it blows my mind on how little we actually know about trees. You know, forestry is one of the oldest occupations in North America, and it's still unregulated. You know, it's
why is it unregulated? I mean, with a country so big, with so many trees.
Oh man, well, you know what? It actually, I find it actually works the opposite because we have such an abundance of trees, we take them for granted, right?
Good point.
It's especially we're in Niagara, and we're seeing a lot of new development in Niagara right now, like everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're just plowing down bush like it's just destroying what we're all about, right?
Yeah.
And it saddens me because we can build a house in a forest, and you only need to take out a very small footprint for that house. You know, some of the happiest people that I know live in or near forests, right? Or in a community with lots of trees. You see a lot of these subdivisions that they put in, they scrape all the topsoil off, put shit in, and then you can't grow anything, right? And then we're constantly battling soil conditions, right? And soil is probably one of the top topics in our industry right now.
But you're battling soil conditions because of that scrape-in, and then I'm not going to fault specific trades, but it becomes garbage landfill at that point.
Absolutely.
And they think that by skimming 10 inches of topsoil of whatever crappy soil it is, solves the problem.
We've actually reduced the value of the property as far as I'm concerned because now you can't grow anything.
That's the thing about it.
Right? So if I was to ever buy a piece of land in a subdivision that's going to be developed, I would tell them, don't touch my dirt. If I own this now, like,
That
you don't
dirt
take,
is belonging to
that
you.
dirt belongs to me.
But that's
now,
the first thing they do.
right?
I mean, we've got enriched soil here.
Yeah.
It's just when we let the powers be, they contaminate it.
Oh, they crush it. Soil compaction is probably our biggest issue. Soil compaction is 90% of the time our issue.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how would you want to approach this business, this industry? How should it be done? Because I love that you just said you can make a small footprint to build your structure. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know about you, sure, leaves are turning right now. It's November. It's coming to the middle of November right now. We've seen the leaves all turn for the last month. And every weekend I've been raking, right? Bushels and just filling them up and getting them all ready. It's not a chore in my eyes, to me, right? Because I respect the land. But I guess a lot of homeowners find it a chore. They just think, why is this menacing thing creating this mess, right?
Well, you know, the best thing is it's not a chore if you don't do it at all. The best thing you could do for your soil is not rake up your leaves at all.
Just leave it. Yeah, it becomes a compost at that point.
Yeah, it's like dead salmon in the river, right?
Yeah,
the river needs it. The soil needs those nutrients.
That was a little true. I don't rake on the grass. I rake on the walkways, right?
Yeah.
So I got to clear all that and get it all ready. But that was the first lesson I ever learned from an older gentleman, just in the neighborhood. Wasn't even in the industry. I would see his lawn every spring, beautiful, luscious, green.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's your secret? He goes, I don't rake my leaves.
Yeah.
I leave the leaves there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the winter does its thing, fall does its thing, and then spring comes along, and all of a sudden he's got this perfect lawn.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it actually works.
So if we as humans put as much care into trees as we did our grass, Man, it would be a real beautiful community.
But then
I'll tell you
grass,
that.
we get into another argument where they're pumping a lot of stuff into it, right?
Yeah, well, as humans, I think we need to get our head out of our grass. In general, it's, grass is awful. And hey, I at home I got a 10-acre lot, and there's probably 6 acres of it that's grass that I'm actively trying to get rid of. But I get it. It's nice. It's easy to manicure. But if we see a customer with grass, we know the soil's compacted.
Got it.
Right? So
you already know where that client has come from and where they're going, what their mindset is about this topic.
Yeah, not all. When we show up at a customer's property and they have mulch down, right away we know that they're trying to do something. Right? So mulch is probably the least expensive, easiest thing you can do for your tree, for the health of your tree. Pruning and mulching by far are the two easiest. And it's like an oil change on your car, right? It's preventative maintenance. Honestly, the healthier your tree is, the less deadwood you're going to have, the less it's going to fail, species specific, obviously. And then, there's so many benefits to mulch too, right? You don't have to mow it. It stops the mechanical damage, the whippersnippers around the bark. It stops or even reverses soil compaction, dumps tons of nutrients into the ground. It insulates, so it'll keep the soil warmer in the wintertime and cooler in the summertime, and it'll regulate moisture. So when the soil's dry, it'll retain the moisture, and then when the soil is too wet, it'll actually wick it out. And then at Safe Tree, we're actually, as far as we know, we're the first in the world to chemically profile different species of mulch. So what we've done is we approached Vineland Research Center,
okay,
and we've taken 8 species so far, and we've chemically profiled them. So now we know in those 8 species we found a little over 16,000 natural chemicals. So we can take these chemicals and we can use them for either root development or growth or fighting off disease, all naturally with no exogenous chemicals.
What are the top mulches that you're recommending to people? Is it tree specific or area specific?
Yeah, so it's tree specific. We're still in the development stage of it, so it's important for me to kind of stay one step ahead. But one thing I can say is the stuff you're buying at garden centers is garbage.
What is it? Is it just fillers?
Most of it, I would say probably about 75% of the garden centers where you buy mulch from is construction waste, or mostly construction waste. So when we take down a house, all that material goes into that, and then they color it, and then you put it back on your trees. So you got, you would know you got pressure treated lumber, you got glued timbers. We found
chemically
drywall
infused material.
Oh yeah, drywall, insulation. We found everything in there. And then the so-called natural stuff that you get is either white pine, cedar, or hemlock, because that's what's readily available at the sawmills.
Yeah.
Well,
and an abundance of it too.
An abundance of it.
Yeah.
And so with our research, we're actually, like I said, the first to kind of find this out. Chemically, white pine is very boring. There's not an abundance of any beneficial chemicals in there. Cedar is rot resistant, so it doesn't break down, right? There are some benefits of cedar. One of them would be it seems to keep mosquitoes and ticks away.
Critters, I was going to say. Yeah.
But there's not a lot of nutritional value. And then hemlock's an interesting one. So one I'll leak here is hemlock has a chemical in it that's advantageous for seed germination. So if you're trying to use mulch to keep weeds down, forget it, right?
It's going to enhance it. It's going to assist it.
Absolutely. Now, if you want to switch,
okay.
if you want to switch from grass to wildflower, and you want to do like a wildflower yard, hemlock's your way to go, right? So it'll really boost what you need for growing wildflower.
Why did you, Ivan, make the conscious decision to actually start studying these little details here? Because were you skeptical? Like you were assuming something was going on? And that's how you discovered it, or?
Well, for years we've known that mulch is good.
Okay.
But nobody really knows all the details of it, right? And we know that like the other than the chemicals, the nutrients and everything else we knew. So we're prescribing this for our customers for their trees. And then I got thinking, I'm like, well, what are we prescribing? What's in this, right? So I started doing a little research and poking around a little bit, and I actually just got myself in some trouble trespassing on trying to find this information out, because apparently some of them really don't want you to know.
They don't want this information out.
Yeah, that it's construction waste, right?
I had no clue.
Yeah, most people don't. And then once I found out, I'm like, man, I can't put this shit on my customers' trees, right? So then we invested in a tub grinder. So we reuse when we cut a tree, we regrind it into a finer mulch through the tub grinder, and we sell it back to our customers. So then I started thinking, well, what are we selling back? Right? We know it's natural. We know there's no construction waste in it, but what if I'm putting black walnut or willow or a different species on these trees? How is that going to affect the growth of the tree?
Yeah.
Right? Is there a chemical in there that another tree wouldn't like? And so I approached Vineland Research Center and asked them to pull up this information, because they have probably the largest database in the world, and nothing. There was one scientist who I've actually had the pleasure of meeting and watching speak is Dr. Glenn Percival.
Okay.
And he's done research on species-specific mulches, but from a side of the salicylic acid in willow and its effect on triggering the defense mechanisms in trees, and then high sugar content mulches like sugar maple and cherry and their root growth. And he was using a centrifuge, so basically pretty easy stuff. So we actually broke down and separated each molecule in the different species to chemically profile it, and yeah, man, we found some pretty wild stuff.
Man, I got a world of questions to ask you. I mean, what's the number one tree here in Canada?
The number one tree, well, it's hard to say, because like where we are,
depends on I guess province wise.
Yeah, it's so diverse, right? Like you get into the prairies and all you're getting is poplars and aspen. You get up north and there's a lot of hemlock and fir, and then down here we're fortunate where we are here, but especially in Niagara, we've got the Carolinian forest. Man, we can grow almost anything, right? And and that's another thing about all this development is we're building right over top of some of the best growing soil in the world, right? Our tender fruit in Niagara, our farms are shrinking and our development is growing. Where the QEW is, like that should go right through my house. Like where I live, I'm on top of the escarpment. One step up from clay is like porcelain. It's like I got to work really hard on growing trees at my house.
Wow.
That's where the QEW should be, right? We should be growing below the escarpment. But, everybody
That's
wants
a political
to be
argument to fight, like everyone just designed. Right now, isn't there there's a new highway being proposed? Isn't there a 419 or something like that? They're
I'm
trying
not
to
sure.
get up north Caledon area or something like that. They're trying to pass another one, but it's going right through a bunch of land that is great.
Yeah, well.
But that's the argument is we need more roads to travel, more people to go to certain subdivisions to go through that whole process of.
There's so many places where you look at some of these farms, and not that these farms aren't important, but the cash crop farms like West Lincoln and heading south down towards Windsor, there's so many cash crop farms where all they're growing is corn and beans. Mm-hmm. So that's all they can grow, right? But like all of these places like Jordan and Vineland, for instance, I grew up in Jordan, and man, the soil there is incredible, and you can grow peaches, plums, anything. And I remember in my first house, I dug to put the cistern in, and the soil at 6 inches was about the exact same as at 5 feet. There was no layers. There was no transition. It was a sandy loam all the way down.
But that's just natural.
was all natural. And that's what the glaciers made, right? It used to be the bottom of the lake.
And then that top is being scraped out to start the process of building.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we consider greenhouse. And again, not that greenhouses aren't important, but we consider greenhouses agriculture. And then we put a hoop house on it, and it's concrete floor, right over top of beautiful soil, right?
What's the worst thing that we're doing to trees? Doesn't matter what species it is.
Cutting them down.
Just cutting them down, right?
Yeah, man. We're taking down. Everybody keeps saying, "Well, plant trees, plant more trees, plant more trees." Well, the amount of trees that we're planting don't do what an old mature tree does, right? We live in Pelham, and there is such beautiful mature trees where we live, and people appreciate them there. That's one thing I love about that town. And the same thing's happening in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and even Grimsby's starting to turn around too. But the mature trees that we have is what we need to protect. Cutting down old growth is probably the worst thing that we're doing in my eyes.
What's the cycle on, I guess, poplar? Because we supply a lot to the construction industry regarding poplar, Douglas fir. Yeah. And what is it? Like a poplar tree gets harvested at what age?
I'm not sure. That's more of like a forestry thing.
Yeah.
We're more, as arborists in the arboriculture world, we're more urban forests. But I mean, poplar is honestly, it's a very low value tree. They grow fast.
They grow really quick.
Yeah. Our high value trees are going to be our sugar maples, our oaks, walnut. Where we live in Lincoln. We're in Pelham, but Lincoln area and Pelham area, that place was founded by the Pennsylvania Dutch, and they literally followed black walnut trees to find the best soil. Right?
Because that's what a walnut tree does, right?
Yeah.
The nutrients of it, right?
Yeah.
Are you ever going to see, I mean, I'm sure we've seen all these images back in black and white photos. You've seen grown men standing right next to a cut down tree with a diameter of what, like maybe 10 feet across or something, even bigger, right?
Yeah.
Are we ever going to see that again? We're probably not.
I don't think so. Probably not. Not like you're describing in those photos. So you see the short, stocky guys and next to these giant trees. But I think one of the biggest reasons, Manny, is paranoia, right? People get paranoid. They want to cut these trees down because they think it's a safety thing. So
safety insurance, it's going to fall on my house.
Yeah.
But a tree falls on your house because it's not being taken care of. It's not being pruned. And extreme weather. It
can be. But on the other hand, when they come down real slow. Right. And hey, if the construction guys are doing their job, then it should be good and tough to hold it up. Right. But a good example would be cavities, like large cavities in a tree. You see the raccoon living in it. Well, everybody thinks that it's a weak point in the tree. It actually could be the opposite. So when a tree is wounded, it grows reaction wood or callus wood. Okay. Callus wood is used to compartmentalize that wound. So close it off.
Like keloid skin?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, so, but that callus wood is significantly stronger than regular wood. So depending on where in the tree, it could potentially be the strongest point of the tree. Now, again, that is species specific. And it's different between coniferous and deciduous trees as well, right? So a coniferous tree will grow reaction wood on the compression side of the tree, where a deciduous will grow reaction wood on the tension side of the tree, right? So there's a lot more biology that goes into, trees than we even begin to consider, right?
I saw that with, I've got a tree in the backyard. I would say maybe a 5-year-old maple. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden this big hole started forming on the bark, and I didn't know anything of it. And I lost another tree not too far from it. It just rotted out, and I still don't understand why that happened. and eventually it died and it had to come down. But then I was thinking, okay, this one's going to die as well too. So I don't know what was going on there, but I've been watching this thing over the years, and you're right, that opening it's been getting stronger. It's been getting bulkier, and the tree is still thriving really well. Haven't done anything to it. I just left it alone. What should I really be doing to it then?
Well, it all depends on what is going on, right? If it's a wound, then you just let it do its thing, right? I mean, it could be something like canker. It could be a disease, something that's causing it. But honestly, the best thing you can do is just support the vigor of the tree. So this is mulching, fertilizing. You can get an arborist in and do deep root fertilizing.
Yeah.
So they do what we do is we inject fertilizer into the soil at the roots, right? So with 200.
How far down do you go?
It's about 6 to 8 inches. And we're 200 PSI, and we blast it right in there. And then what you're doing as well at the same time is you're not just fertilizing, is you're aerating.
Yeah.
Right? So aerating the lawn is different than aerating your roots. When we blast that liquid in there, we're loosening the soil up. We're introducing oxygen too.
To create nutrients in there.
Yeah, roots need oxygen just as much as we do, just as much as fish do, everything, right?
Is it true that the canopy of a tree, if it hasn't been pruned, is half the size of the root system, or is it the other way around?
Well, again, that's circumstantial. So we've done some root exploring with Airspade, and we've found that, as a rule of thumb, where what's up top is down below, right? It's relatively equal. However, that's not always the case. We discovered once on a red oak that there was hardly any roots, and then it had one big giant root that was going right through to the neighbor's septic.
It was following the water.
Right? And that's where it was getting everything, where everything else just didn't really grow very well. So it's going to put its energy where it needs to, right?
Food.
So to come back to the construction side, there's this big myth about the tree's too close to my house, it's gonna ruin the foundation.
This is all BS, right?
Well, here's
Yes
the
and
thing.
no.
The tree is not going to cause the foundation issue. You have to have a foundation issue first
For it to find it.
And then it'll definitely make it worse, right? So the roots are going to follow the water, right? So the roots aren't going to get into your septic tank unless your septic tank has an opening for the roots to get in.
Attention contractors, welcome to the future of construction resource management with our platform, where you can easily buy, sell, or rent tools, equipment, and materials with fellow contractors. Say goodbye to wasted time and resources. Need that specialized equipment for a specific project, or want to earn extra income from your underused resources? This platform has you covered. With its user-friendly interface and a vast network of trusted contractors, you'll find what you need or make your resources work for you seamlessly. Join the construction community that's changing the game. Visit them online at altlaborsolutions.com and start optimizing your resources today. Alt Labor Solutions, where contractors connect and resources thrive. So I've got a sunburst locust that I purposely planted
Yep.
about 12 feet, maybe 11 feet away from the actual house.
Yep.
It was planted when it had maybe about a 2-inch bark, right? Trunk.
Mm-hmm.
It's got about a 14 now. Thing grows nice. It's been fed.
Yeah, they're great trees.
And it's probably, about a 14-inch right now, right? And it's growing really nice. The canopy's above the roof line now, right? So now I have to just protect the eavesdrops because of fall and it starts to clog it up.
Yeah.
But it's just routine. That's all it is,
Absolutely.
right? I'm not concerned because I actually did some work in the basement, and this is a house that's old enough that it has its downspouts connected to the weepers underneath the house that go to the front, right? Which they don't do that anymore, right? But I'm not concerned of the root system. The only stupid thing that I did was I ran irrigation around that root system, and eventually as it grew and grew, it started pinching the irrigation system.
Right.
Which I was like, okay, now I discovered exactly what's going on because one spring, the irrigation wasn't working. And then I started realizing, the tree's looking beautiful. It's wonderful. It's great. And then I started realizing, hang on a sec, this tree's been getting bigger and bigger. The roots have been getting bigger and bigger. And it probably was compressing the irrigation lines.
Yeah, and a lot of the problem we have in our industry is just poor planning, right? And just in like construction, you got to think of what's going to happen in the future. But for us, when we think trees, we're thinking as far out as possible, right? Because you plant a tree now, you're going to see the benefits in a decade, right? So when you're planting a tree, don't plant it underneath the hydro lines. No. Like we get this every single day, right? And then people are going, well, why does hydro come and destroy my tree? Well, there's the balance between humans and trees, right? I'm a utility arborist as well, so I trim for our local hydro companies. The importance of keeping the lights on at 3:00 in the morning are huge when it's minus 30 out, right? So that's important as well. But if we don't plant them right underneath the hydro lines, then
should we? I mean, Toronto's famous for this, right? So you see this butchering going on because they'll come in and they'll make it safe, but they're actually damaging the tree to a point where it's going to eventually have to be cut down completely.
Well, yes and no. Again, it's circumstantial. So we try and do the best that we can as arborists to trim trees around hydro. It's not easy. And we can mitigate it. If it's done properly, we can allow these trees to grow for a long time. So there's one tree in particular. You may not be familiar with this one, but the people who live in Niagara, on Merrittville Highway, real close to Merrittville Speedway, there is a large bur oak tree on the side of the road. It's massive, and the lines run right through the middle of it, and it's been trimmed so it's hollow, right? And the canopy goes up and above it, and it's beautiful. If we do it properly, then we can definitely have both. We can have a healthy tree, and we can have a safe community.
Is it being done properly?
Not always.
Okay.
Not always, but the good thing is that at the end of the day, trees are renewable. So if we do have to cut them down underneath the line, we can plant new ones, right? It's not doing it irresponsibly. Again, we still have to find this balance. We do have to remove trees. We do have to remove trees that might be a threat. But as long as we are being responsible in only removing them when we need to and replacing them, so that the next generation and the generations after that can enjoy them.
So what happens because you get this a lot from tightly knit urban homes having these massive trees, and then they're too close, and you start seeing this growth that just overtakes a retaining wall, or it overtakes a certain section of it, and then they start getting worried about it. So their solution is just get rid of it completely. But that tree is like, if you're familiar with Toronto, can you imagine going down Palmerston, which has got a tree canopy for like a long chunk of that street, right? Which is actually, it's very beautiful because it's picturesque. You walk in there and you see this canopy, right?
Yeah.
And if you started getting rid of all of these just because of what's happening at the base of it for the homeowner, what's going to really happen at that point? What are they going to do? Just park another tree right there and wait the 100 years that it's going to take for that tree to get to what the tree was already there?
Yeah, well, exactly. You literally have to wait 100 years,
yeah.
Right? So planning, again, this is the importance of planning when we're doing something, when we're building, when we're getting into construction stage of an area, considering what's going to happen in 50 to 100 years, right? It's just looking as far out as possible. And if we don't do this now, then our kids are going to be like, they're not going to enjoy anything.
Are we going back to, and I'm pretty sure I know this answer based on what you've said earlier, subdivision happens, boulevard happens, you've got that standard tree being parked in there, whether it's a maple or what have you, right? They just pop it in there, 2 anchors, maybe a little bit of a critter protection at the very base there, and move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. But then what happens is, if you pay attention to the neighborhood, 3-4 years, that tree is dead. A large chunk of them are dead.
Yeah.
And then they just die, and all of a sudden the X comes along, and then they chop it down, and they just put the exact same tree. And then the same process happens again.
Absolutely.
What's going on? It's the soil.
Usually. Okay. Now, so there's so many things to consider. What we actually find, just as much as soil issues, is, and I'm not trying to discredit landscapers at all. I have a lot of friends who are really good landscapers, but a lot of landscapers have this idea of when they plant a tree, they have all kinds of ideas. I've seen lots, but there's two things that happen. There's many things, but two main things that we see when people plant trees. They're planting them in the baskets. So they dig the hole, they just plug the tree in the wire basket, and they backfill and they walk away. Okay. So what that causes is now there's, I'm sure I'm going to get lots of feedback on this, but what happens is those roots can't go out, straight out.
They start to turn?
They start to turn, and in 20 years, you get girdling roots. So this is very common in Norway maples. They planted Norway maples for a long time. And at the bottom of the tree, you'll see a flare. So if the trunk goes straight down into the ground, it's either been backfilled or chances are it has a girdling root. And that's usually the cause of a girdling root. So it basically chokes itself out. The other thing we find is when they plant, they do this like volcano of mulch around the tree. You've seen it.
Yeah.
They've got this big pile of mulch. So
the bad mulch too.
The bad mulch too, usually. Yeah. So what happens there is, so if we kind of compare it on the construction side, so that root flare is your transition between root bark and trunk bark. Okay. We'll call it like a chicken skin. It looks like the skin on a chicken's foot.
Yeah, okay.
So that's the transition. So the trunk or the root bark is meant to have moisture and the trunk bark is not. So if we compare it to an old barn, when you drive by an old barn, the stone foundation, right, is meant to have moisture against it. The boards are 100 years old, but right at the bottom of the boards, they're always rotted out, right, because they're sitting in moisture. The same thing's happening to the tree. So that moisture sitting up against the bark that is not meant to have moisture against it constantly rots it out and it girdles the tree. So the problem is the 1 or 2 year warranty that the landscapers put on the tree. It takes 4 or 5 years for that to happen.
Can you salvage it if you start seeing those?
You got to get it right away.
You got to get it right away.
Right? Usually when we see the effects of like the tip dieback and everything happening from a buried root collar, it's usually too late. Not always, but it's really important to see that flare at the bottom of the tree.
So the best thing is to get it out of the basket, cut the wire mesh away, remove the burlap. Well, the burlap will decompose, right?
Well, no, you want to get the burlap.
You want to get the burlap
bare
off?
root, and
Just
then you pull them. You pull the roots out a little bit, so because they're all going to be turned, right, from being in the basket and in the burlap. You just pull them out, and then another problem we see is people auger holes, and it glazes the soil. So now you've got this hard crust that the roots can't penetrate, right? So all you got to do is take your shovel and score the edge of the hole, and it gives it a somewhere to go. The other thing is mycorrhizae. You could put mycorrhizae in the bottom of the hole, so it's a fungus, right? And that'll allow the roots to get more nutrients. There's a lot more to it, but basically it's a symbiotic relationship between the roots and the soil. And if we picture a root as a finger, the mycorrhizae will give it more of a surface area, to gather more nutrients and all the stuff that it needs, right?
So let's talk roots, because the amount of times that you've got contractors, deck builders, or doing additions, and the root shows up, right? And what's the worst thing that we can do? Just take the spade shovel and just cut it clean?
Yeah, you don't want to tear them. I mean, ideally, call an arborist. We air spade and we prune the roots. We can prune roots the same as we can prune a canopy.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a technique attached to it.
100%.
So it's 100%. Not the spade, just jab it,
no,
guillotine it, gone. And that's what we've seen happen all the time, right? But I like companies like Techno Metal Post that are conscious of it. As soon as they discover it, they'll try to go around it.
Yeah.
So then the root can actually grow around it and go past it. So
And you don't even need to go around it. Most of the time, as long as it's not too big of a root, we can prune it. We can prune it back, right? And that'll direct the energy somewhere else in the tree.
But you're not okay. So when you say big enough, like how big of a root are we talking about? That
it's hard to say.
Yeah,
it's hard to say. Usually, if you get into something like 2-3 inches or bigger, you're gonna start doing some damage. Chances are that won't kill the tree. The real big roots, you're talking 6-8 inches, you're doing some serious damage now.
So feeding trees over the year, any special formula, or is it just Mother Nature water?
So feeding trees, so when we're talking nutrients and water, it's not really food. So the food is photosynthesis. The leaves make the food, right? So what we're getting from the soil is the building blocks for the tree, right? So it needs these minerals and everything and pulled up. So if we're we'll call it feeding. So if we're feeding the tree via fertilizer or mulch, the best time for fertilizer would be probably spring and fall, or just spring.
Cooler temps, right?
Well, you want to get it when it's absorbing these things. So in the spring, it's absorbing these building blocks to start growing, and in the fall time, it's doing the same before it goes into dormancy, right? But for mulching is actually better in the fall time than it is in the spring, because the mulch overwinters. So the mulch actually turns into a better product if you put it down in the fall, overwintering, and then it's a much better product in the spring, and the tree can start absorbing that instantly.
And then start growing again.
Yeah, everybody mulches in the spring, but I'm going.
That's almost like a marketing thing, because you start seeing everybody doing marketing. It's time to get out there. The weather's gotten better. It's like, pick this up and start putting your plants, your color, your perennial, all that stuff, right? That's just kind of thing. But why isn't the marketing machine telling us this?
Well, because you don't see the effects of tree health for a long time. It's not immediate gratification, right? So everything trees is delayed gratification, right? It's like starting a business. It's like going to the gym, right? People want to see things. People want to see money coming in right away. People want to see their muscles right away. With trees, it's even longer, right? So it's a hard sell. But if we do it now, then again, we're doing things for the next generation, right? And I'm a big believer in servitude, right? We're here to improve. We're here to grow and improve. So if we're doing everything for us now and being greedy, then the next generation is going to suffer immensely.
I agree.
Right.
So I got another question for you about trees, right? I think it's a lilac.
A lilac, yeah.
It's got the blooming, right? Every June-ish it blooms. For whatever reason, it was parked in a retaining bed right next to a shed. The shed is rotting out because of that tree growing now. But right next to that tree, it's inside of I would say 2 foot by 8 foot long bed. I'm watching this tree grow, and it's thriving. It's not going into the shed just yet, and there's no way that it's going into the concrete. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be going down, but it keeps growing. And is it eventually going to start to suffer because it doesn't have? Because don't roots go topically, like they just at a certain point?
Yeah. Or
does it just recondition itself to go lower to keep on finding where the nutrients are?
Well, there won't be oxygen very deep. So I hear this a lot, and people talk about it with a taproot, right? Well, it's got this taproot. Well, taproots aren't really what most people think. They don't go very deep because they lack oxygen, right? There's not enough there to sustain it. So yeah, they go out. So to answer your question about the lilac, it's like a fish in a fish tank, right? it's only going to be able to get as big as its surrounding, right? And in Toronto, you see this, they plant the locust trees in these little tiny squares in the concrete. They usually end up dying, and then, you know, so yeah, they will only be able to grow to the area they have and basically what's in that area, right?
So if I were to break open that area there where there's concrete or what have you, am I going to start seeing the roots turning around, or am I going to see like almost as if it's a tree or a shrub that's actually been in a basket of some sort for too long?
Yeah, exactly. You'll see them all kind of in one area, and then it's like wherever the water's going, that's where you see all the real hairy roots, and that'll be the big cluster of them because they're getting that. And you know, when it drops its leaves and everything, it's still replenishing that soil a little bit. So it's always getting a little bit of those building blocks. Probably not enough to sustain it as it gets bigger, but it'll continue growing until it uses up basically whatever it can.
Is the flowering a good signal that the tree is still healthy? That whole process?
Yeah, I mean, if it's flowering a lot, then yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But if you kind of if you were to keep a diary, not that you would, but if you were to keep a diary or take pictures, you would probably notice that it flowers less and less.
It's actually flowering more and more.
Yeah.
Which is really weird to me.
Well, it's getting what it needs.
Okay.
Right.
So it's finding its nutrients somehow, right?
Absolutely.
But it's also growing into the shed now. Like it's pushing part of the roof line.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, maybe on top or underneath that shed is some old dirt that hasn't been touched in a long time.
Could be because it's only a pad.
Yeah.
Right. So it's only a pad. So maybe it is actually going right underneath there.
Or if it's stone underneath, there could be a lot of water sitting under there. Right.
Interesting. Okay.
So, you know, there's so many different scenarios.
Well, you bring up the good point because that's what homeowners, I guess, that are not educating themselves. Their first thought is that I want the beauty of the tree close to my home because it looks great and it's kind of nice to have that in my backyard, but I don't want it too close to my home that it's either going to fall down or go into the system underneath.
Yeah.
Right. But that's not what the tree's going to do.
Not necessarily. So a lot of the reasons that a tree comes over, not all certainly, but most of the reasons a tree comes over is because something we've done to it. Right. What we're seeing right now, a lot of in our area, at least, we've had a lot of windstorms lately. So we've seen a lot of, spruce trees uproot and just trees uproot in general. And there's this big panic, like my trees are going to fall over. Well, if we strengthen the root system,
Aerating,
fertilizing, mulching, especially knowing what we know now, some of the mulches that we're using, we can strengthen that root system. We can make them bigger. We can make them stronger, and that's the foundation of your tree, right? So, if you guys when you're building a house, if you build a shitty foundation, then your house is not going to last, right? And that's why we take old homes with fieldstone foundations, lift them up, take that out, and put concrete in, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. You got to use the proper mortar in your bricks.
I honestly do love. Listen, I'm not an environmentalist. I mean, I'm on both sides of the fence. I respect nature and I respect urban construction and growing. I love both sides, but I do love when Mother Nature fights us. They win.
Always.
I love seeing people's homes and I see roots or the base of a trunk just lifting, ripping apart a slab of concrete, right? And I'm like growing around. Like I love seeing this tree growing over a fence line of some sort. I love seeing that because you know who's actually in charge here at that point. And obviously it's getting what it needs to get and it continues to grow and thrive. And you should be aware of that. So, I mean, when we're building and homeowners are asking for that addition to get even further, but we don't want to leave that tree or we don't want to keep that tree next to our house. There's a way to find a balance for both.
Yeah, usually, there's a lot of people that, so
the concrete aggregates and construction industry is always evolving. With an ever-changing industry, it's crucial to stay up to date on the latest technology and techniques. Come to the Canadian Concrete Expo to keep your skills sharp and upgrade your knowledge to meet the needs of today's market. The Canadian Concrete Expo offers over 40 conference sessions, certification courses, stage presentations, and live large equipment demos, all in one convenient location. February 14th and 15th at the International Centre in Toronto. If you haven't looked it up yet, go to the CanadianConcreteExpo.com and sign up for the newsletter to get special show offers direct to your inbox.
The topic of additions is great because this comes up a lot, right? People have us in,
we want the space, get rid of the tree.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And it's like, well, what do you need the space for? Most of the time, it's just a status thing. A lot of people legitimately do need a lot of space. I've got 3 kids myself, and I wish I had a lot more of it. But, you know, a lot of the time, you can adjust to have the tree as well, right? And again, it all comes down to planning, right? If we plan properly, we can have both. If we plan properly, that tree does not need to lift the concrete, right? If you have a good concrete guy, chances are, if he does it right, chances are the tree won't lift the concrete, right? It's not, I guess it's all circumstantial, but there's barriers we can put up, right? So root barriers, so it doesn't go into those areas. You can put them around your house. We can excavate and put root barriers in.
Made out of what?
So there's a couple different types, but basically it's just like a tarp that goes in the ground, right? And it stops the roots from penetrating through and going into your foundation.
It would just make a left or a right and just
absolutely
go around it.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about. I love this, man. I love what you do. Like, it's just because these are conversations that we never have with homeowners. And when you try to start this dialogue with them, glazed look over their eyes and they just want to get to the sub-zero. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it just really frustrates me because me personally, for some weird reason, last winter, I had so much joy watching this squirrel rip apart the very top of a juniper that I planted years ago, which was like that little basic Home Depot thing. Maybe 4 feet tall. The thing is like 15 feet tall now.
Yep.
And I'm watching this squirrel just having its fun at the very top there. I don't know if the squirrel was trying to build a house or build an addition or a deck or something like that, but it was just ripping it apart. I'm just looking at him going, okay, it doesn't bother me. And now the juniper's growing again and it's rebuilding itself. So I'm fascinated by that. And the thing is, I guess homeowners would have looked at that going, chop it down. I don't want the squirrel doing that thing.
Yeah.
It brings me to the topic of tree houses. Mm-hmm. Like I remember early in my career, I started doing a job in Bloor West Village and the homeowners had a massive cedar in the back. Massive. This had to have been 50, 60 years old. And they wanted to do something for their new kids. Like the kids were 3-4 years old at the most, right? And I said, why don't we build the tree house in the corner there? But I won't attach it to the cedar and I won't connect it to the cedar. I'm going to make it as if the house has just been built next to it years ago. And it looks like the tree. And that's exactly what I did. Yeah. I built a crooked house that looked like a tree house that was embedded in it. That's cool. And it was beautiful. And then the cedar just kept on growing. And when I was conscious of putting the 4 posts, I was really conscious about digging down. And of course I found roots, but I was very conscious of how I did all that with the concrete. And this is before helical piles. Yeah. That treehouse is still standing to this day. Yeah. That cedar is still standing to this day. And they were both built right next to each other. So, I mean, I know every parent wants a treehouse because their kids ask for it. Yeah. And when they become teenagers, they can smoke reefer in there as well. So that's totally a place of goodness. Exactly, right? Yeah. So it's like, how do we navigate those sales to these clients, explaining to them that if we put the care into the tree, I can give you the tree house that you really want. And they both look like they're growing at the same time.
Well, so here's the thing. What I use for our clients is if you go to somebody's house and they have no trees in their backyard, suburban, and it's just concrete and stone, how does that make you feel?
Boring.
You go into somebody's house, a heritage home, or not even a heritage home, a nice house with, or not a nice house, but a backyard full of trees, full of color. It's probably about 10 degrees cooler because it's not in the sun. And how does that make you feel, right? So now you want to build this house or put this addition on and you want to cut your trees down, think about what you're going to feel like in 5 years, right? Okay, so it's instant gratification now, but you're sitting on your back deck, you can't stand the heat because it's facing south, and now you got to put it up an awning where a tree naturally does that, and you get to sit and watch the squirrel, right? Man, it's just, honestly, Manny, it's, what do you want in the future? Do you want a cooler, healthier, more beautiful backyard, or do you want a cold, hard, stone, hot?
I go back to marketing, Ivan. I go back to, we're sold this idea. I don't want to maintain the grass. I don't want to maintain the shrubbery. I want just a place that I could get out of the house if I'm going nuts inside the house. But you're right. It's a park pavement, just concrete environment, which has no purpose, in my opinion, because if you have these different types of trees, you're inviting nature to come in. You start seeing rabbits, you start seeing squirrels, you start seeing birds, all kinds of stuff. That becomes more tranquil sitting in that environment than sitting on a beautifully manicured walkway or pavers or concrete or whatever. So you're 100% right, where explaining to the client that, what do you want 5 years from now? Because that's what you, and it's not that, it doesn't take that long. I mean, sure, a mature tree, to get that 2 foot wide trunk, yeah, that's generational. You're not going to see that. Your kids may see it. But you can get a healthy tree in the next 10, 15 years where it's got a healthy canopy, and it's going to be really serene for you to sit out there next to that tree.
Especially if you do it right. I've got, like I said, where I live, one level up of clay is porcelain. So I got to work really hard on my trees. Now, mind you, I do have access to everything I need. But I planted some red maples, and they were a 70 millimeter DBH. So they're about, construction talk about
70 you got me on metric now.
2 inches.
Okay.
Something like that.
Pretty standard size tree.
Yeah. 10 feet tall planted. Yeah. And just with mulch and fertilizing both spring and fall, this has been 3 years, and they're about probably about a 10 centimeter DBH now. So 5 inches.
5 inches, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the canopy like?
It's not that big. It's full. But what we found is, and I'm not really sure why, our secondary growth was significantly more than our primary growth. Primary growth is the twigs and the leaves and all of that. And secondary growth is your wood, right? Man, I've got these great big fat stalks, and personally, I think it has a lot to do with what we're doing with the mulch, right? And the species that we're putting down. So
in the fall, preparing for winter.
In the fall. I mulch in the fall, yeah.
Where do you want to suggest where you get that you want to recommend where we should get our mulch?
From Safe Tree.
That's get it from you guys, right? That's
from Safe Tree. If you can get your mulch from a local arborist, by far the best stuff that you're going to get. As long as they are responsible and you're not getting stuff with disease in it, or pests that can carry forth. Ours is a little nicer because we do break it down. It's not chip because it comes out of their wood chippers, right? We reprocess ours through the tub grinder to break it down nice and fine and more fibrous than chip. And it just breaks down faster.
You're not bagging it, are you? No.
Yeah.
Oh, you're bagging it too?
Yeah, we built so with my mechanical background, we built a bagger last year with the help of our mechanic. He did most of the work, but it was quite the interesting
to set it all up.
Man, we were electrocuted and all kinds of shit. It was fun, and then we built this conveyor and yeah, keeping the conveyor straight was an interesting task. But yeah, we built a bagging system. And this winter, we're going to start for the first time approaching garden centers and getting our product out there. Because honestly, there isn't a product like it out there. There's nothing.
So the big players are going to not be fans of you.
Well, the big players, you know what? The big players will always be the big players, right? The biggest one out there is Grow Bark, and I'm pretty sure they're owned by Walker Industries, which runs all of the dumps in Niagara, right? So Like, we're never going to touch these guys. People are always going to buy this mulch. We're just giving a product that we can be proud of and say, hey, this is good shit, and this is what you need, right? Again, it'll take us a long time to get it out there, and just through.
I don't think it's gonna take that long. Like, what are you guys selling per bag? I'm just curious because I'm ready to buy some bags right now.
I'm not sure. So last year was kind of our test year. We had one nursery specific, Niagara Nurseries. They're on the corner of 7th Street and King Street in St. Catharines. I think that's 7th and King. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Great guy, John's his name, and he sold our story with it, saying what it does, and it's made by arborists. And man, he couldn't keep bags going, and we were selling them for, I think they went for $7 a piece, and we were selling last year for $45 a yard bulk. So we'll probably be a little more this year because we have a very limited supply.
Yeah.
And because it went so fast, like everybody who got our mulch raves. Like, we don't have customers, we have raving fans.
They've seen the difference in their...
Yeah, and it's a beautiful color because everybody wants the color, right? That's half the issue. But we let ours sit for a year, and it's a real nice dark texture, but it's fine because we want it to break down. Not because we want to sell it every year, but because your trees need it every year.
I got a question for you. Since we're coming up to the holiday season, I am a huge fan of seeing twinkle lights on trees. Being wrapped around the trunk and wrapped around the main branches.
Me too.
Is that hurting the tree at all? Does it hurt its feelings?
No.
Okay.
No. The
leaving it on year round?
Leaving it on year round hurts it. So as long as you're not penetrating the tree at all, right? Hang it on there, drape it on there all day long, right? We can certainly enjoy that.
Yeah.
But leaving it on there is basically choking it, girdling it, right? The tree needs to expand and grow. It's like you see a fence, on one side of the tree will grow around the fence. But if you go all the way around the tree, it can no longer get all of the nutrients up and down through the xylem and phloem of the tree, and it'll ultimately girdle it or kill it.
Is there, can you put too many trees in your backyard?
Me personally, no.
No, can anybody? Because I'm a fan. I'll just let you know that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 trees, and the backyard's probably 50 by 60.
Put it this way: before us was a forest, right?
Yeah.
Can you put too many trees in a
No,
forest?
you can't.
No, they'll regulate themselves. Right, you'll have some trees that'll dominate over others. You have different areas, and forests go through cycles too, right? They'll go through different species. When they get a lot of sun, they get big mature trees that start to die off. They'll get different species coming in the undergrowth, right? And then, they go through these cycles. So can you plant too many trees? No. If anything, they'll actually grow properly. Because most of the trees, most of the trees that we plant get too much sun. Trees are not meant to be a 10-foot trunk with this huge canopy. They're meant to be big, long poles with 80-foot trunks and a little canopy on top.
So is it cranberry, not a cranberry tree, or what's the tree that flowers in the spring? It's got small little flower petals on it.
Small little flower petals.
I don't even know the name of the tree. The reason I bring it up is because it was planted first, and then right next to it, probably about 15 feet away, silver maple was planted. But it's funny that this first tree that was there probably 10 years before that one is pushing the silver maple. You're seeing the trunk going off center. And can that be fixed?
No.
It can't. It's just that tree is telling that tree that...
Yeah.
Even though the silver's taller, the silver's got to have 10 feet on top of that.
Yeah, so it might be something to do with the sun. So how people say a tree grows towards the sun.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't actually grow towards the sun. It's the cells on the shaded side grow larger to try and collect more sunlight.
And then it just starts to...
Yeah, so it makes that turn, right? So chances are it's not pushing it. It's causing some kind of shade or something for it to grow that way.
I'm just watching it. I just think it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because the silver maple is a big tree. It's supposed to be a bigger tree.
Yeah.
And it's getting taller, but I'm seeing it go. But you're right. It's actually leaning towards the direction of the sun.
Yeah.
So I guess on the summer months where you get full sun, it starts to soak in more of that. And then it keeps on growing from that point.
Yeah.
And okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about that. Mm-hmm. Now, is there? I see sometimes, I'm not a fan of this. You'll get clients just putting the row of junipers around the whole perimeter, which just creates a root mess, doesn't it? Or
So what happens there is you're creating a monoculture, right? So monoculture is if one of those trees gets a disease, they're all getting it and they're all dying, right? So it's important to consider if you are planting trees intelligently, plant different species. Native species, we've planted way too many invasive species. Norway maple being one of them that drives me.
can I say Japanese maple?
Oh yeah.
Why does everybody want a Japanese maple tree?
Well, because they don't grow real big and they look nice. Like I'm an advocate for planting lots of different trees, not just native, but I prefer native, right? Because we do love Japanese maples. Like there's got to be over 500 varieties of Japanese maples now. Like it's crazy. But they are a nice tree. They're slow growing. You know, they don't get real tall in your lifetime, at least. Yeah. And they're great. The fall colors, like on some of them, are really
blood red.
Yeah. But if we plant different species, one will have different flowers, different times of the year, different colors. And if one gets a disease, we're not going to wipe out everything, right? So. Ash trees, man, ash trees. What a devastating thing that's happened, both our ash and our elm. But our ash trees, a lot of people planted those, municipalities especially, because they're fast growing. You get quick shade. They're good, strong trees. And then we get the emerald ash borer and we lose a whole neighborhood of trees. Right. So
what do they replace them with?
Well, I don't know now. Like they're getting a lot smarter now. We're going with some more native species, but you know, I see a lot just replaced with locust and Norway maple. Norway maple is a real popular one, right? They have the Crimson King has the purple or red leaves. Awful trees.
Really? Huh?
Oh, they're terrible.
Why they
have tons of issues. They're invasive. They have so many issues. There's just so many other nicer trees, but you got to wait, right?
It's just and nobody really wants to wait, right?
Nobody wants to wait. But and that's the thing too is if we do mulch and we do fertilize, man, we can make these things grow real fast. Like I got white oaks at my house and they're keeping up with my red maples. Like white oaks are growing almost as fast as my red
white
maples.
Oak doesn't grow. That's a slow grower.
Very slow grower.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're contributing it to the mulch?
And the fertilizer. And combination of the two, yeah.
Really, huh? Mm-hmm. And then pruning, okay, so basically we should call you, once a year to come in, assess, take care of some pruning, soil conditions, things like that?
Yeah, so it depends on your arborist. So because we're an unregulated trade, there's actually very few arborists, right? No, I don't. I want to be careful here because there are a lot of really good companies, but we're far and few between, right? Most are just tree cutters and basically take a couple courses. And what people really want to look for is certification, right? Either an ISA certification, which can actually be fairly easy to get. The real one that you want to look for is 444A. So that 444, the 444A, that's our Ontario College of Trades code.
Okay.
Or 444B is utility arborist.
Okay.
So if you look for a 444A, this means they've served an apprenticeship and they've done everything. They've done all the schooling to know what they know now. Not saying that that's the be all end all, but it's just one tool that you can use. Having an arborist out once a year is definitely a good idea. Honestly, for our customers, we're on more of like a 2-3 year cycle. We're actually introducing this year what we call a legacy program. So this is going to be an annual report where we come out and give you a report on your property. It's more of a proactive approach where we can make the recommendations on what you need, and you'll get everything laid out. And then we can basically write a prescription and come up with a game plan to serve what goals you want to hit over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
What's your radius? Like how far west, north, east do you go?
For tree removals and pruning, just the region, Niagara region, we stay in there. We're not really interested in growing that part of our company. Honestly, Manny, it's just soul sucking, right? Yeah. Like I'm a climber. That's my background. And just cutting down trees all the time, it was just killing me. So this change that we're going through right now, with our plant healthcare, we expand into Hamilton, Halton, and Burlington. Okay. So that's kind of our area. Less Halton yet, but Burlington, Hamilton, outside of the region is kind of where we are now.
So what's the best thing, Ivan, that a contractor can say? That first statement that they can say to a client that you're going to have a conversation about the trees in the backyard, the front yard, or the side, or whatever, right? What's the first and best thing that GC can say to the client to get them on our path here, what we're talking about?
Well, first of all, it's important to know how much they care about their trees, because as much as we want to solve all the problems, we're going to have those people that just don't care. And that's the reality of it. And you really want to be a salesman. You want to know what the people want, because as a GC, you know that if you do push too hard, you're just going to get pushed back, right? So let's say that they do care about their trees. Well, educate them. The first thing you got to do is tell them that there are things that we can put into place. There are things that we can do to protect these trees so that you, your kids, your grandkids can use them. Not to mention the resale value of your house. Yeah. Right? So
mature lot.
We can literally put a price on a tree. We can monetize trees. We can give it a value. So we're certified to do that. We've done training and we've taken courses to do that. We can evaluate the actual cost of a tree. This comes into play actually a lot where if there's a neighbor dispute and the neighbors cut it down or whatever, we can put a value on that tree on the loss, the monetary loss of that tree. There's one spot in specifically, I can't say too much because it's active, but there's a shoreline issue, and customers of ours are losing their shoreline because of something somebody else has done along the lake. And so we're going in there proactively and evaluating the cost of these trees. So when they fall into the lake,
they are going to fall. There's no salvaging.
It's just a matter of time, unless there's barriers put into place.
So you're appraising the loss of that value there.
Exactly.
I guess it brings me up the rules, right? Because you also, urban environments, subdivision environments, or what have you, you've got trees that are planted whatever distance to the fence line, but the canopy's growing over to the other side to the neighbor's lot.
Yeah.
They may not be as interested in the tree as you are. What rules are in play what can they do or can't do? Like, can they come along and start cutting things down on their side right at the property line?
So our experience is there's not a lot in writing. It's a civil matter, and it's basically what you're going to be able to prove in court. So historically, what we've seen is anything on your side of the property is yours so you can cut it back to the property line, okay, as long as you're not affecting the health of the tree. Right? Okay. So skinning the tree up one side is going to affect the health of the tree, right? Making improper pruning cuts is going to affect the health of the tree. Cutting the roots. A lot of people don't think of underground.
Yeah.
Right? So if a neighbor owns a tree and the roots are going into your side and you dig your foundation and it kills the tree,
then it becomes a civil matter, and you have to prove that that action of theirs caused the death of that tree.
and chances are it's fairly easy to prove.
Because it goes back to the very beginning of this whole conversation that we've had, is just people automatically dismiss the tree because of the fear of the roots damaging the home.
Yeah.
And the home has more value than the tree in their eyes, which I'll argue that point.
Yeah.
Because what the tree does for you mentally. We haven't even talked about any of that stuff, right?
Like we can talk about that one. Well, first of all, it creates the air that you breathe. Right? Like
that's fact.
Right? And one large tree, one mature tree is going to create a lot more oxygen than hundreds of little trees, right? Now there's all kinds of different avenues we can go down with that, and there's all kinds of discussions. But the thing is there is research out there, and when everybody's talking right now, especially, like everybody's very loud about mental health. Yeah. Mental health is huge right now. If you're feeling shitty, where's a great place to go that calms you down? You're going to go to a conservation area and you're going to walk through the forest, right? There's actually a guy that I respect a lot. His name is John Gathright, and he's Canadian originally. He's from Vancouver. He lives in Japan now, and he has a place called Treehab, and he's got a TED Talk. I said, man,
totally, I want to check it out.
Have some tissues, because I cried like a baby. Wow. I saw this guy at a conference, and I got to corner him in a dark alley and steal him for about 40 minutes, and man, I was a baby. And so what he does is he quit his job, very successful man, a TV personality. He quit it and went back to school to get a PhD just to prove that trees improve people's mental health. First person ever to do it, as far as we know. And what he does now is he takes people with disabilities and they climb trees, right? So he'll take kids that will never walk, kids that have all types of different disabilities, and he puts them up in the trees.
Since 1991, Mississauga Hardware Center's MHCI, or Saga Tools as the cool kids call it, has been a trusted name in the construction supply industry, serving the Greater Toronto Area as a family-founded, owned, and operated company. They take pride in their reputation as one of the most respected construction supply providers in the GTA. At MHCI, they stand out for their commitment to fast and efficient service. Their team of friendly, courteous, and knowledgeable staff is available to assist you with any questions you may have. They understand the importance of product knowledge and strive to provide an unsurpassed level of expertise to their valued customers. They take pride in their ability to purchase large volumes of products directly from manufacturers worldwide. This enables them to pass on substantial savings to their customers. Whether you're embarking on a do-it-yourself project, constructing a multi-million-dollar building, or involved in city infrastructure development, their products and prices remain highly competitive within the industry. Order online at www.mississaugahardware.com, or better yet, go and visit them in person, and always check out what's happening on their social at Mississauga Hardware Center with CENTRE.
Yeah, so he actually started. I'm not going to tell his story.
No,
but man, sure. You got John Gathright.
Yeah, so he's connecting the value. That's why I will always argue that the tree has more value than the home.
Yeah, man.
I'm just saying that, like, you just plan for this backyard or front yard.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's a European mentality that what they normally do in the back, they do in the front.
Yeah.
Because the sun. Depending on, the position of the home, you might want to enjoy that morning sunlight in the front of the house or in the back of the house, or reverse during the evening hours, right? Yeah. So you're 100%. I've always looked at it that way. So I've always had a problem. It's always been a discussion. It's not a dismissal.
Yeah.
You can't just say we're going to cut this down because we want to make the home bigger.
Well, there's a lot of bylaws in place now. Unfortunately, not much in Niagara yet. It's getting there, and I hope it happens soon. But, everybody's always up in arms, like the city of Burlington, the restrictions they put on cutting trees. Man, it's great. It's great. So you got to jump through hoops, as you should, right? You got to jump through hoops. And then you got to plant trees to place it, as you should, right? It's there's a lot of there's a lot of restrictions and it makes it really hard for contractors. I get it. But if without those, it just gets taken advantage of, right? And then like Niagara right now, everybody's just cutting trees everywhere, right? And we're really fighting back a lot.
I respect the city for putting the hoarding to protect what's already there when we're constructing things, right? But I'm also very respectful of city officials that come by and notice that we may have moved the hoarding just to get in, but we're still being conscious of that tree or that shrub or whatever it is, and we're going to put the hoarding back.
Put mulch down. It's a great, so a lot of the hoarding is to protect the surface. Put mulch down, it'll displace the weight, right?
Great idea, yeah.
If you do have to move it, put the mulch down. It's like putting mats down to get a skid steer into the backyard.
Yeah.
Put the mulch down, displace it, and it'll stop the soil compaction, and you're actually doing good at the same time. Put it down good and thick, 3-4 inches. You don't want to leave it that thick. Ideally you're only a couple inches, 2-3, but just pull back when you're done, right?
Yeah, you're just protecting it during the process of the construction.
Yeah, and then and the other thing I'd like to mention too is we get a lot of people that put in pools, right?
You're on my same page. It's the same thing. Pool automatically dismisses trees.
Oh man, it's brutal.
And it drives me crazy.
It's brutal. So we've got a bit of a reputation where we are for turning down work. We're really good at cutting down trees, but we turn down probably 40% of our work. And it sucks. It hits us hard. It's restricted us from growing a lot.
Is it sad that someone else is going to come in and just do it?
Yeah. You'll drive by the next week and it'll be a fresh stump.
Yeah.
But hey, man, I can sleep at night. I can sleep at night saying that I didn't do it, right? And one of the most common ones I get is keys in my pool. I hate cleaning up all of the shit in my pool. That I had a gentleman in Vineland tell me his tree was a pollutant. Yeah. So
the tree was a pollutant.
Yeah, it was a pollutant.
I think you're the pollutant, right? That's basically it.
Here's the thing. A lot of the time, keys, walnuts is a big one. Walnuts falling on their head, denting the roof of the car. The reason they're producing so many of them is because they're stressed. It's a stress reaction. They're trying to reproduce. They think they're dying. They're reproducing. The healthier your tree is, the less keys, the less walnuts it will. It'll always still have keys, walnuts, whatever the fruiting body is. But the healthier it is, the less it'll have. Most of the time, it's a stress reaction when there's a high volume.
So let's get rid of the people then. It's as simple as that, man.
I like a nice house. I like infrastructure. I really do.
Just have the two.
And that's it. There is a balance. There is a balance, and we got to stop dismissing it. We really do, because a time will come. And honestly, in Canada, it's so bad because we have an abundance of trees. It's so bad. There's going to come a time where we're like some of these European countries, and we're going, fuck, man, we got no trees left.
I know.
It's like over hunting. I'm a hunter myself. I'm a respectful hunter. I do responsibly. It's important. Like I live next to the short hills, and as an arborist, I walk through the short hills and I see everything up to 7 feet eaten because our deer population is crazy, right? There's no wolves or cougars that are, at least not enough of them. That's a conversation for another day. that are gonna knock these things down, right? And we gotta do the same thing, right?
I got a question for you, because I've seen this not too often, but I've never had the conversation yet. If you were to build a deck and it's extending around a tree, and you purposely want to leave a hole to let that tree grow now, what should you factor in?
The growth of the tree. Just be prepared to continue making the hole bigger. So when you put your joists in or whatever, right? The structure part, when you have a 2x8, 4 inches from the tree, then you're screwed.
In about 5 years.
Yeah, but if you put your 2x8s way back, or 2x10s or whatever way back, and you leave your boards on top, long, you can always just take your jigsaw and continue making bigger. Okay, you don't like the gap? Fine, put some rubber in there, right? You want to keep stuff from touching the bark if at all possible, but just take your jigsaw and cut it back, every 4 years. Leave
Just
a couple
be aware
inches.
of it at some point.
Yeah. Again, it's planning.
Yeah.
If you plan it properly, like I've seen some people build some really cool tree houses where they build on trees and the trees live fine, right?
They're anchoring right to the tree.
Anchoring right to the tree, right?
There's no risk of damaging the tree by doing that?
Well, there is, but if you counteract that, then you're fine, right? And when I say counteract, I mean supplying it with the building blocks it needs to repair that wound, right?
So like what would you put on there?
Well, you would fertilize and mulch.
Oh, so you're just feeding. Okay, so you're taking.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the actual, because obviously you're using some sort of mechanical fastener to get anchored to it.
Yeah. So depending on what they've done, I've seen a lot of people just brace right up against the tree, right?
Okay.
Or they'll build something that hangs from the tree, right? Where strapping you can always adjust, but there's always a way, man.
We've seen a bunch of artists that are being conscious of the tree and also the structure that they're building. Yeah. But it's designed in a way and it's thought in a way to make it last a very long time.
Yeah.
That's done on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not like trees are a renewable resource. At the end of the day, they really are. But we don't want to take advantage of that. Like, man, I got some beautiful black walnut. I'm sure some of your guys will hit me up after this, and I encourage them to. I got a black walnut log sitting in our yard right now. It's got to be like 15 feet long, beautiful straight trunk, and I bet you it's a 40-inch diameter. Wow. It's a beautiful log. I'm not going to do anything with it. It's a waste, right? There's some guy listening to this right now just like salivating.
I got to call this guy. I got to get him on board. I want one last question before we get into the 10 questions. I want to just ask you, if I were to build, is it possible to build and use 2 trees to create a canopy without the canopy? Make the tree, I guess, go with the distance of an archway. Do you know what I mean? I want to build something in the middle of something, but I want 2 trees creating an archway. What are the trees?
Yeah, so the archway will just be the canopy over top. You're not going to use
but I want to kind of focus the canopy just over the archway. So I want it, I guess...
yes, you can. You can train trees.
That's where I'm going with it.
It takes a long time. You have to be
it's serious pruning and serious education.
Yes, and you have to be very patient. Very patient. Depending on the species of the tree. You want to do it with a willow? No problem. Okay. We can do that with a willow. We've actually there's a lot of people that do this. So they'll plant you basically cut a willow limb off at 6 feet, put some root stimulator on it, stick it in the ground.
Yep.
Keep it wet, it'll grow.
Yeah.
So you can put these in circles and train them and build a structure out of them, a living structure, right? So you can train trees, you can tie them. I'm doing one at my house right now with Russian olive. I'm building a hedgerow. I just bend them over, tie them, and they'll start to grow that way, right? Yeah, you can really get creative.
You can do things, but it's a lot of work.
It's patience.
It's patience and a lot of work, right?
Yeah. I'd say it's more patience than it is work.
But how is it in, I guess, Canada with our seasons and the extreme winters? You got to be, they're dormant at that point.
Yeah. So all honesty, it's right species for the right purpose, right? Right species in the right location. When we're planting, not just any tree can go in any soil, not any tree can go in any condition, right? You're not going to plant a Japanese maple in the Muskokas, right? In Niagara, we can grow pretty well anything, but it's all in what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. It's all planning. It's all planning.
You just got to assess, I guess, the location at first, the earth, what's here, what's happening, how much do you want to put here, and what I guess picture this 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Don't picture it when we're finished and we're walking out of here with the wheelbarrow.
Absolutely. Or 100 years.
Yeah. Or even that years, further as well, right?
Too. Depending on how committed you are, There's guys. I just met a guy, a gentleman, awesome, amazing arborist, Brian Sayers. He's in Burlington. He used to own Tree Doctors in New York, one of the fastest growing tree companies. And he's retired now. Very intelligent guy, and he collects seeds and grows trees from trees who have inspired writers. Right. So if you read a book and that book or whatever has been inspired by a tree, he'll grow trees from that specific tree. Yeah, really cool. Right. Now that's patience.
I love that. I did some work with Thermery, and they had their 20th anniversary in Estonia. And a lot of people were being invited. There was only 2 Canadians invited. I was one of them. And a very good friend of mine that I met through the company, he was a sales rep. He was my other Canadian friend. Everybody else was from around the world. But to gain entry into this anniversary edition that they were having in Estonia, you had to send in a picture of a tree and then the meaning behind that tree. So I actually sent a picture of that sunburst locust, and I just said, here, I actually planted this thing. It's grown. I've been taking care of this tree, and it's thriving. It's doing really well. And they did a little collage presentation where all the photos were being presented to everybody that was there. It was a small group of people. It was like less than 50 people from around the world. And there was such love for trees at that event. That's what I liked about it.
Yeah. And you know what? Most people do. Most people really love trees. A lot of people are just greedy.
It's those sounds. My neighbor lost his tree during, I think, last year's, there was a storm, and you heard that crack.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard that crack a few times, and it split right down and then went onto the neighbors, and then he had to chop it down at that point. And it was such a shame because you're 100% right, where 20 years, 100 years from now, I'd rather look at a backyard that's full of greenery, canopies, shrubs, small, big, what have you, than paved. As much as I love pavers or flagstone or whatever, and then all you're going to see is whatever color the pressure treated fence line is all about.
Yeah.
That's all you're going to see over and over.
We were fortunate enough to get into the market when we were a little younger, and we've got a 10-acre lot. It was basically a hayfield when we bought it. And first thing I did was I bought a 20-ton excavator, a relic, and it took me 3 years. I dug a pond. I got about an acre worth of water. Wow. Stocked. I got 5-pound largemouth now. But wow. I'm about somewhere between 160 and 180 trees in so far in 8 years. So best time to plant a tree is yesterday.
Yeah.
You know? And I know I'll never get to enjoy them as the way they should be, but my kids will. Right, my grandkids.
Ivan, this has been a pleasure, man.
Yeah,
honestly, I can continue. I got to have you back. We got to talk some more, but this is absolutely great. And then I just want to let everybody know to reach you, Safe Tree online. So www.safetree.ca, 289-650-1775. And then his email is info@safetree.ca. And on IG, it's Safe Tree Ltd. And then on Facebook is Safe Tree Professional Tree Care. 10 questions of construction. Ready?
Sure.
What everyday sound brings you joy?
Everyday sound, probably just the quietness and the sound of nature.
What's your favorite beverage?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Honestly, as awful as probably Diet Coke.
I haven't had a pop in forever.
Me neither. Like it's like
it's a kid thing.
Yeah, but water usually.
What's your least favorite tool?
My least favorite tool, probably a tape measure.
What turns you on creatively?
Probably climbing, being in a tree and pruning it.
What word or concept do you find overused these days?
Word or concept overused? That's a good one too. I would say attention to detail.
That's a good one.
I think I just don't think it's actually used like people say it.
I don't think they know what it means.
Right? Yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
Ooh. Okay, so I got a minute?
Yeah, of course you do.
I want to clarify this one. So everybody thinks it's a curse word, but it's not. And that would be pussy.
That's not a curse word.
It has nothing to do with the female anatomy.
Yeah.
At all. It's actually short for the word pusillanimous. So it's P-U-S-I, not P-U-S-S-Y. So,
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, you got to look it up. Pusillanimous is the act of being a coward. So when you say don't be a pussy, you're saying quit being a coward.
What's the origin of it? English?
Honestly, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Pusillanimous.
I'm going to look it up. That's a good one. What's your favorite vehicle in the entire world?
Ooh. One that I have or one I want?
Anything. Doesn't matter.
I've got two. One I own already, and that's a Ford Excursion. It was a really hard truck to find. Dream car would probably be a Maserati MC20. 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Jesus. Yeah, it's a beauty.
What do you miss from your childhood?
What do I miss from my childhood? Probably lack of responsibility.
Yeah, if more adults were more childlike, I think it'd be a better place. If you could master a skill outside of your own expertise, what would it be?
A skill outside of my expertise. I think some kind of academia, you know. I really admire scientists. I really admire like working with Vineland Research and seeing these people and the way they talk. Like, man, I could never do that, but I admire them and their intelligence. So I would say some type of academia, some type of research for sure.
Where are they located?
They're in Vineland, right at the end of Victoria Avenue. So Victoria Avenue dead ends at the lake, basically. They're on the left-hand side. They're what a place, man. Like, they're incredible people. They have access to some of the best scientific, when it comes to plants, some of the best scientific methods in the world. Like, they're world renowned.
I should reach out to them, see if they want to come on the show.
I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great. I'm not going to name drop, but after I can tell you who to reach out to. But yeah, I think it'd be fantastic to have some of them on. Last
question: if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at those pearly gates?
Damn. Good job, brother.
So all he or she has to say, man, Ivan, the absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge here. And I think more and more contractors should be aware of having a conversation about trees.
Yeah, and anybody wants to reach out at any time, you know, hey, I'm open for discussion for sure.
All right. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. We're out of here, Angelina.